Securing the rights, writing the script, casting, redrafting the script to please each of the financiers, recasting when an actor pulls out, shooting. Films take a long time to make. With so much time and, more importantly, money at stake, you'd expect things to be run tightly. In some cases they are. Christopher Nolan is notorious for his planning ahead, but more often than you'd expect, some of the biggest decisions in a film's development can happen right at the last minute, just before the final edit's locked. I'm Ben from What Culture, and here are 8 great movies saved by ridiculously last-minute changes. Number 8. The post-credits scene was only thought up 2 months before release. Iron Man 3. To kick off a somewhat subversive start to Marvel Cinematic Universe's Phase 2, Iron Man 3 messed with the traditional post-credits scene. Instead of providing an exciting clue for an upcoming film, we got a slight cameo from Bruce Banner that revealed the whole film was being narrated by Tony Stark to his not-so-angry friend. And that was it. In a universe-expanding sense, it's a bit lackluster, but things were almost very different. The Ruffalo stinger was only dreamt up at the last minute after Robert Downey Jr. bumped into his Avengers co-star at the Oscars and decided to replace the planned scene with an appearance for his buddy. What the original scene was has, irritatingly, never been announced. Some believe it might have been Stark jetting off to meet up with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but the timelines don't match up, so it's probably a load of rubbish. Number 7. The original ending was removed a week after release. The Shining. The ending of The Shining is nothing short of masterful. After Danny and his mother escape, leaving Jack to freeze to death in the maze, we cut to the inside of the Overlook Hotel, slowly zooming in on a photograph of the 1921 4th of July ball, which features Jack himself front and center. In Kubrick's original cut, however, there was a further scene that picks up with Danny and Wendy after their scarring experience. Hotel manager Mr. Ullman visits the pair in hospital to tell Wendy that Jack's body wasn't found and gives Danny a tennis ball just like the one that lured him into room 237. It raises more questions than it answers and puts the onus more on the ghostly hotel rather than the more effective family dynamic and Jack's madness. All that remains of the scene now is sadly a couple of grainy stills. Number 6. Hugh Jackman wasn't cast as Wolverine until 3 weeks into shooting. X-Men. Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. He played Logan a whopping 9 times, becoming a bona fide Hollywood star in the process. From this standpoint, it's crazy to think it was Dougray Scott originally cast as Weapon X. Scott ultimately pulled out at the last minute to finish shooting Mission Impossible 2. Whoops. But despite the setback, Singer was clearly holding out for Scott to get free. Or scot-free. As Jackman wasn't rushed in as a replacement until the movie had already been shooting for 3 weeks. Now, the rest is history, but anyone else as Wolverine would have felt wrong. I suppose you could call Scott a Wolverine in retrospect for wankers. Hashtag Wolverine in retrospect for wankers. Number 5. Most of pre-production was spent planning to make only 2 films. The Lord of the Rings. As crazy as it may sound, the idea of making J.R.R. Tolkien's Mammoth Tome, which, to be fair, was released in print in 3 parts, as a trilogy, was an obscenely fantastical idea. Peter Jackson's original pitch for Lord of the Rings was as a 2-film story, with a 3rd for The Hobbit. When the budget spiraled, however, Miramax bigwigs chose to bail on the project unless it could be shrunk down to a single film, something that would clearly be impossible. When Jackson tried to sell the production to New Line Cinema, they too questioned the number of films, only in the other direction. Part creatively motivated, part financially, they suggested bumping the pitch up to 3 films. The finished films did chop and change a lot between the books, but Jackson had the time to do the epic journey justice. Number 4. Test audiences stopped Scott ending up with the wrong girl. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World ends with the titular slacker hero flying off into subspace with his new girlfriend Ramona after defeating her 7 evil exes in combat. It's weird, but it's not as weird as the original ending, which sees Scott go through all that video game-infused action only to eventually pair up with his obsessed teenage ex, Knives. Enter test audiences. Usually a blight on the creative process where members of the general public nitpick a film they have no real interest in, they actually improved Scott Pilgrim. The scores from test screenings were low, primarily because of the ending. Edgar Wright in the studio realized this and shot the new, thematically fitting conclusion. Number 3. Lucas remembers Obi-Wan had to pick up Anakin's lightsaber. Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Even though the Star Wars prequel trilogy are frequently mocked, there's actually a handful of events referenced in the original trilogy that they needed to make happen. Anakin becomes Vader, Luke and Leia are born, the Empire is created, and the Jedi are exterminated. But even with such a short list of things he had to do, George Lucas still almost missed out on a crucial moment essential to the film's narrative. Oh, George. In A New Hope, Obi-Wan gives Luke his father's lightsaber, saying, "Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough." Yet, in the original cut of Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan sliced Anakin up, watched him burn, and then just walked away, leaving the essential lightsaber on the sands of Mustafar. It was only when pickups rolled around that Lucas realized his error, and he quickly added a shot of Obi-Wan picking it up. Number 2. Disney made it a cinematic release with only 9 months left of production. Toy Story 2. Unsurprisingly for the series that single-handedly turned animation on its head, Toy Story's journey to the big screen was far from plain sailing. The first suffered a complete production shutdown and rewrite of the script, leading to a total change of Woody's character. But Toy Story 2 was even more fraught. The film was originally conceived as a direct-to-video sequel and wasn't even an official Pixar production at first. However, when it became clear from the early drafts that there was something more special here, the film was bumped up to a tentpole cinema release. Except that the time frame for this change allowed for only 9 months to take the rudimentary cheap version and hand in the polished, finished product. But not only did they pull it off, they added in 12 minutes of new story and a character, and wound up making a film inexplicably better than the original. Number 1. Juggernaut originally broke Magneto out of prison, not Quicksilver. X-Men Days of Future Past. You didn't see that coming, eh?
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
There's an ongoing debate as to whether Quicksilver in X-Men Days of Future Past was better than the one in Avengers Age of Ultron, but Evan Peters was the central part of Days of Future Past's highlight section. A slow-mo sequence where he saves Xavier, Wolverine, and Magneto from Pentagon security. But that sequence and Maximoff himself were almost completely absent from the film. The original plan was to have a younger version of Juggernaut help break Magneto out of the Pentagon, with the switch made to Quicksilver not happening until the film was fast approaching principal photography. While the change is well patched up in the final cut, this does explain why Wolverine says he knew an older Quicksilver in the future, despite no previous films showing that. And that's our list. Make sure you subscribe to the What Culture YouTube channel for more lists like this, and don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. I'm Ben from What Culture, and thanks for watching.